The scene opens with Drake McCabe sitting at a table, writing a letter under a canopy on a beach on one of the peripheral islands in the heart of the Dominion. We hear his monologue. "Dear sister, I am alive. I assume by now I've missed at least one of our irregularly scheduled attempts to maintain a connection, and for that I apologize. But from what I have heard, my work in the Explorers Guild nearly cost me my life some weeks ago. I recall diving beneath the shallows when the ebb tide retreated much farther than usual, which granted us access to the ruins we were researching. But I recall nothing beyond that. The other members of the guild tell me I ignored their calls to come back before the waters rose up. But truly, sister, I only recall the dive. And awful, awful whispers. Luckily, members of the Cynosure Society were there to provide me medical treatment, but they've brought me to one of their outpost islands for those who require additional observation after injury. They tell me I must wear this locket upon my body for the rest of my days, insisting this is not just about faith, but a vow sworn to keep me alive. As far as I can tell, it does not open, but when I shake it near my ear, it does sound like something moves inside, and I swear I've seen it emit a smoke of some kind from its invisible seams. Nevertheless, I will keep it hidden, lest I be mistaken for an acolyte, but my superstitions urge me to test these theories. On the other hand, my brothers in the guild have kept me in the loop, and it appears I did manage to find a translation of some of the ancient writings scrawled throughout the ruins. Much of it is still illegible, but 2 words have survived, and they're working on decoding the rest of the cipher. If it's any consolation, sister, for my absence, perhaps you can use your considerable wits and your connections to ponder the 2 words I fear I may come to be known for. And we're going to do a little intro, rolling on the oracles here. We're going to roll on Descriptor Focus. That is a 20, which says Mysterious. Perfect. And that is a Cursed, which doesn't matter for the oracles, but I'm going to interpret it as such. 93. Vessel. The camera zooms over Drake McCabe's shoulder as he signs this letter to his sister Cassidy, and as he writes the words mysterious vessel, I think that we see the nib of his fountain pen explode, and just a blot of ink begins to swallow the latter half of the word vessel. We transition to a new scene elsewhere in the heart of the Dominion, and find Inquisitor Azriel Sterling going about his clerical duties. He appears, as usual, weak and frail. The censer atop the staff he carries is closed and only exudes that glowing mist-like fog we saw during the interrogation many moons ago in the tavern of the now-deceased crew of the Enduring Blade, when the staff hits the stone, and there's a small puff like smoke rings that come out of this censer. We see him working, and then he takes a seat on a bench as those he's been working with continue to walk by. He's taking a breather, and we see just how weak Azriel Sterling truly is. He looks haggard, bags under his eyes, robes hanging off of his body. We see him look around nervously before clicking the latch and turning his censer to open it, allowing a bit more of that mist to spill out, which he greedily inhales before closing it back off. His mind flashes back to Damaris Iver's words in Deepwater Dungeon, and Elder Duran's secrecy of late. He looks around once more and opens the censer again and takes a large inhale of that glowing blue mist. When he stands, he seemingly has transformed into elite physical form. He sneaks through the grounds of the Church of the Enduring Servants and into Elder Duran's personal office. Rifling through papers, he seems to find nothing, but then noises in the hall force him to hide in a closet. Durand and a few acolytes come in to procure items needed for the mass, while Azriel holds his breath, hoping he did not leave evidence to his tampering. He feels his strength and stamina waning already, but he can't risk using his censer in the closet. He takes a brief look around and finds the usual: vestments, scriptures, seasonal items, but one item in particular catches his eye. It's a censer, similar to his, but different. Floating in the center of the iron sphere atop the staff where the censer is a piece of sky iron. It's clearly visible. There's a fine latticework to the metallurgy, and as Azrael leans closer to take a look at it, it begins emitting a familiar mist. Except this is not a glowing blue. Azrael gasps and inhales a lungful of red mist and doubles over. When his eyes open, they glow red with the light of cinder, and he bursts out of the closet, and we fade on Elder Duran's screams. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ironsworn Sundered Isles, Season 2, Heart of the Dominion. I'm going to keep the announcements very short this week because we are ending May. I know the May schedule was a little out of order, but we're getting right back to it for June. Weeks 1 and 3 will be Ironsworn, which means that this episode and the next episode will be back-to-back Ironsworn episodes, and I'm going to do 2 more perspective checks for next month to catch up, but I do plan on probably releasing either a design-a-log for what I'm working on this year and hope to get out, or maybe one other kind of bonus episode just to, keep other things going. The only other thing I want to bring up in the announcements this week is that Ironsworn Sundered Isles Season 2 is coming to an end, and I think there's probably 3 or 4 episodes left. We will see. Maybe I'll go longer if the story needs it, but I'm trying to end it right around the half point of the year so I can move on to other games, and I have a few frontrunners. Please let me know if any of these sound like something you'd like to hear more than others, or if you have a suggestion. Right now, my current list of frontrunners is going back to Colossal, the very first solo game I ever played on the DMs After Dark feed, because there's a lot of Patreon content that's really great, and I'd love to revisit that system now that I've got a lot more solo experience under my belt. Also, considering Miru 3 when that comes out. I also did that on the DM's feed, but it's another installment of a game I've played, so I think it'd be fun. Or potentially diving into something more trad, I guess, like The One Ring or Forbidden Lands. But for now, let's get back into some Ironsworn, because we got a combat to settle. All right, we are doing this thing. We are jumping right into this episode, and we are hopping right into combat. Last episode, both parties that split up, Senator Minos back in the Senate in Carcordia, the capital of Kairos, the Kyroti Dominion, and Cassidy, along with Lee Sterling, obviously, Damar Seaver, First Mate Asana, and Quan on a rowboat, rowing through a tangle of shipwrecks near the shore of this second island, are making their way towards the second altar when they are surprised by Marama and 3 other Bloodsworn. They stand on the wreckage of these ships that threatened to poke holes and sink the Revenant to bring it as one of the many, many shipwrecks that make up this harbor, but Cassidy knows she must get past these Bloodsworn to the altar to cleanse the spirits that are stuck on this island. So let's just jump right into it. We are going to be starting a combat. So when you enter the fray, you initiate combat. We need to give this objective a name and a rank. We are going to call it Defeat the Bloodsworn or Get by them to the altar. We're going to give this the rank of Dangerous. I know, usually I would be more comfortable giving this Formidable because Marama is so terrifying and the Bloodsworn are pretty terrifying, but I also think that by having more allies on my side and having a secondary objective in the form of just getting by them to the altar, which might change things, maybe it drops it to Dangerous, right? We can kind of spread out stuff. Plus, last time when we did Formidable, we just got rocked. I don't think we had a single progress last time. So we're going to roll Enter the Fray, and I think that we are caught in a trap. So we are rolling plus wits. Here goes. Not bad. That is a 4 plus 2 for a 6 versus a 1 and an 8 on the challenge dice, 8 being Wraith. And so on a weak hit for Enter the Fray, you can either start off in control or take plus 2 momentum, and I cannot see how we are possibly in control here, so we are going to take the +2 momentum, and I'm going to roll on an oracle I never roll on, which is the combat moves oracle, or combat action oracle, excuse me, to see what Marama does, because she's in control here. So what is it that she does to initiate this fight? Let's see. A 6 says, block a path or cut off an objective. Well, there goes our secondary objective. Marama obviously knows about this altar. That's interesting, but okay, she's cutting off the altar from us. She knew where we were going. She needs to, through this vow that she has sworn on this corrupt iron, do something with Cassidy. Seems to be revolving around her blood. Okay, so she is blocking or cutting off an objective. So when Cassidy sees that, I think the first thing we have to do in this combat is react under fire. We are not just going to strike or clash, right? We're not going to go on the offensive. We're going to react under fire, and I think that Cassidy looks around, sees that if the rest of these Bloodsworn can stand on these shipwrecked materials, I think that she looks at Quan and says, get this boat to the shore. Everybody else, split up, go! And everybody just jumps off the rowboat and begins scattering. Here goes. We are going to do this with Shadow, it seems like. Deception kind of thing. That is a 2 + 3 for a 5 versus 2 4s on the challenge dice for a strong hit with a match. That is an auspicious start. On a strong hit, you are now in control and take +1 momentum. So I think that we do get the Bloodsworn to split up, and maybe whatever their initial plan of attack was is no longer viable, and Marama just growls as she chases Cassidy and yells at the other 3 Bloodsworn to focus on everyone else. And now we're split up in a bunch of one-on-ones. And again, I did not make a very combat-centric character here in Cassidy. She is a spy. She is someone who uses information to her advantage. So in these situations, as much as I want to say that there's going to be this epic showdown between Marama and Cassidy, I think that Cassidy is the prey and Marama is the predator. So we are going to be fleeing. We are going to gain ground with edge, just running away, trying to get to this sea cave where this altar is. Here goes. All right, that is a 2 + 2 for a 4 against a 1 and a 10 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. 10, of course, being Cinder. So I think Marama is maybe going to catch us on a weak hit for gain ground. It says here, I can choose one. Mark progress, take +2 momentum, or add +1 on my next move. I think that we are making progress. I think that by separating these Bloodsworn, they are chasing us down. The other 3 are scattered and are no longer protecting the entrance to this sea cave beyond which lies this altar. Marama is frustrated, and we are getting closer, but that's only 2 progress. So let's go ahead and roll again on combat action. I'm enjoying this oracle. I think I'm going to roll this again, see what Marama's doing. I did roll a cursed die on that, so I think I'm going to say that whatever this action is, uses her Bloodsworn abilities. Or maybe there's some kind of... Let's see what it says. 36, leverage the terrain or environment. Ooh, that's perfect. Cassidy crawls up on some of this shipwreck, and she is pretty good at hiding and balancing and maneuvering herself in tight situations, and she's running across this kind of just shipwreck, stones, rocks coming out from the shallow seas over here in this harbor near the sea cave, and she's running, and I think Marama just unleashes some of her abilities. This says use the environment. I think what she does is she sees what Cassidy's about to jump on for balance to get through, and I think she jumps on another section of it, making it move in the water, and Cassidy sort of misses and half splashes in the water, and now they're standing on either side. Let's say it's a mast, right? It's this long circular mast in the water, and it is leaning across things, but Marama jumped on it and moved it just enough that Cassidy doesn't land on it as nicely, as neatly as she wants, and now the 2 of them are standing on either sides of this like 40-foot tall beam mast that has gone down in a shipwreck in these shallows. What's Cassidy going to do now? Oh, I love this. I think that what Cassidy sees is Marama smiling, smirking, thinking, okay, well now you can't run away from me, but I think what Cassidy knows is, I'm just going to jump back to the place that I just came from, and this thing's going to move again, and maybe it's going to cause Marama to have to like fall into the water or something like that by the weight displacement. So we're going to once again gain ground, but this time using wits to cleverly gain leverage. Here goes. +2. Oh my god, the exact same result. Sort of. A 1 on the action die +2 for a 3 against a 1 and a 10 on the challenge dice. Again, 10 being Cinder. That's crazy. Another weak hit. So I think that this is going to be... I'm just going to keep marking progress. Actually, you know what? This sounds like momentum. We're going to go up to +8 momentum. As much as I want to make a lot of progress and get this done with quickly, I think that that gets Cassidy a little bit of momentum to now rush forward. For the sake of the fiction and how this is working, I know this is a solo game with Cassidy as a main character, but I'm going to strike while we have control, and I think this is actually going to be one of our allies striking. Quan is in the ship, and Lee is technically a ghost, but let's roll a d6 to see which ally this is. We're going to say 1 or 2 is Asana, first mate, 3 or 4 is Damaris Evair, 5 or 6 is Lee Sterling. Let's see. That is a 2. Oh, we get to see Asana in action. We have not talked much about Asana, although I'm sure, like all of you out there listening, if you play solo games, I have a very strong headcanon image of what Asana is and her role on the ship. I just haven't talked about her on the podcast very much. I think that she is a former acrobat, and again, women in this version of the setting, I'm not playing it like real life, historical, age of sail kind of gender inequalities and all this stuff. I think that she is very capable. Again, probably part of a crew that was thieves or pirates or something like that. She used her incredible physical control of her body to be an infiltrator or something like that. And now, as she is cleverly making her way around this battlefield and one of these Bloodsworn is chasing her, she again has not been in the forefront of this, but she is Cassidy's first mate. She is capable, she is strong, she is good at what she does, and she's definitely been briefed on these Bloodsworn and what they can do. We're going to strike with Asana against one of these Bloodsworn. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is at range, and I'm not sure what weapon she has. I think maybe she does just pull out a pistol. Cassidy doesn't carry one, but Asana probably does, so she's going to pull out pistols and take a shot. Here goes. That is a 4 plus 2 for edge because we are attacking at range for a 6 versus a 2 and an 8 on the challenge dice, 8 being Wraith. Magical, so that is a weak hit. On a weak hit, mark progress twice, but you expose yourself to danger, you are in a bad spot. I think that Asana takes out one of these Bloodsworn, or thinks she takes out one of these Bloodsworn, and is slowing down to kind of take a look around and see who else needs help. But these Bloodsworn have strange powers over blood, and I think that while this Bloodsworn is going to die because they have been shot by these pistols, they've managed to magically control their blood loss and blood flow to the point where they can keep going. And now Asana is in danger. We are at 6 boxes of progress because we marked this as dangerous. I think that others are seeing this. Let's just go ahead, and now that we're in a bad spot, let's just keep this going as we kind of swing the camera around to everyone else. Let's see, we're going to roll a d6. If it's 1 to 3, this is going to be Damaris Evair. If it's a 4 to 6, this is going to be, I guess, Quan? Or Lee Sterling. We'll see. It's a 2 anyway, so this is Damaris Evair. Perfect kind of segue. And we're going to see, now he is clashing. Damaris Evair was not in as good a position, plus Asana now being in danger. I think that maybe causes him to lose his focus on the fight that he's currently having. Let's go ahead. He's fighting in close quarters. He's got out like a cutlass or something like that. And here goes. That is a 4 plus 1 for iron versus a 2 and a 7 on the challenge dice for a weak hit on clash. 7 being on Cinder, so maybe being overwhelmed here. On a weak hit, mark progress, but you're dealt a counterattack or setback. You stay in a bad spot and must pay the price. Here goes, paying the price. 61. Your equipment or vehicle malfunctions. Now that doesn't seem like it makes any sense. But if we consider the rowboat, or maybe even Quan, I think that Quan is going to take a hit as he is just continually rowing in this fight. And I think that Asana is being targeted. I think that Damaris Evair is being overwhelmed. I think that Quan is there, and there is one other Bloodsworn who is going to do something to Quan. Now, we know that Lee Sterling can touch the iron within these automatons, within these clockwork soldiers, and has done so to learn about them. The Bloodsworn have sworn vows on this cursed sky iron, I wonder if they have any way of manipulating the Sky Iron at the core of Quan. Let's go ahead and roll on it. I'm going to say that's unlikely. Otherwise, I think this is just going to be, they're going to sink our way out. We're going to roll unlikely, so 25 or less, they know how to manipulate the Sky Iron in Quan. That is a 17. They do know how to manipulate Quan's Sky Iron. Oh no. That's very interesting. I think that one of the Bloodsworn hops on to the rowboat, and that should be no problem for Quan. Quan stands up to its enormous size, the balance rocking the boat, the weight, all of this stuff rocking the rowboat, and while it could easily just grab and throw this Bloodsworn overboard, what happens is I think the Bloodsworn cuts their own hand or, like causes a big old spray of blood to go all over Quan, which isn't a big deal until the Bloodsworn puts their hands on that blood on Quan and says something that the camera doesn't catch, and all of a sudden we see Quan just stop moving. We're going to cut back to Cassidy, who is in a fight with Marama. We are now in a bad spot. Things were looking good at the beginning. We scattered, we were making room, we were making progress, but now all of a sudden things are turning because these Bloodsworn have unnatural powers. How are you supposed to compete with that? We are at 8 progress, so we are close to maybe bypassing. We did set 2 goals for this potential, and we've taken out one of these Bloodsworn, but not the others. Quan could probably easily handle the other, if not for this magic. I think the only way to fight this unnatural is with the little bit of unnatural that Cassidy has, and we're going to call in Lee. And I think that this is going to look like, knowing that her friends are in danger, she calls out to Asana, she's letting Marama get closer, Damaris is in a tight fight, Quan has once again been sort of overridden by some kind of commands, and I think that Cassidy is going to get angry here, but in a clever way, because this is how she operates. She is going to feign that anger being directed towards Marama and let Marama get close to her like they're going to fight, but we're going to call on Lee Sterling. He has gone in and touched this Sky Iron before. I think that Cassidy has been wondering for a while, what about these Bloodsworn? How is it they do this? What about their iron? What is it? So she's been waiting for a chance to get close like this, so Lee can potentially reach inside of them or touch any iron they may be wearing and maybe learn something. We are going to clash because we are in a bad spot, and we are going to do this plus iron, which is not our best stat. Technically, this could also, I guess, be taking the hit for reacting under fire, but I think this is more intentional from Cassidy, and it's allowing Lee to get close. So we're going to take +1 because of the aid of Lee Sterling, and see what happens. We're going to roll +2. Oh no. That is a 3 +2 for a 5 versus a 7 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a miss. However, we do have 8 momentum. I can turn this into a weak hit, which I think I'm going to do. Resetting our momentum all the way down to 2 to get a weak hit that says mark progress, bringing us up to 10 progress. It says, but you are dealt a counterattack or setback. You stay in a bad spot, pay the price. There's no way of getting out of a bad spot before we are going to take decisive action. That is an 81. You are harmed. This is dangerous, so we are going to take 1 harm to that, and because we were only a weak hit with the haunted asset, we also take stress, which I think makes sense. We are down to 2 in our health track. Oh goodness, I didn't know it was that low. And 3 in our spirit track. And now it's time to find out what Lee Sterling learns when he touches Marama the Bloodsworn. I didn't think of this when I was doing way back in my world building and we came up with the Bloodsworn, but there is a table in the faction section for cursed faction aspects. And I'm going to roll on this table, and we're going to see an uncanny aspect of a faction or its members and see how that plays into Lee Sterling's experience here. It is a 14, consumed by a dreadful vengeance. Okay, we kind of knew this, because Marama was itching and desperate. She looked really rough in Elder Duran's office, begging to be let loose to hunt down Cassidy. She was dead set on revenge against Cassidy when she joined the Raskar's ship, and I think consumed by vengeance. Well, who would all of these Bloodsworn be swearing vengeance against? And they're allied with the Church of the Enduring Servants, and apparently Raskar is doing the bidding of the Coyote government, but is not really involved or actually aligned with their goals, is just taking advantage of the situation. I think all of these other players, the Church, because they are technically neutral and not a part of the Coyote Dominion, the Bloodsworn, Raskar, maybe all serve the growing uprising that is the Norish Rebellion. We've already had one small island kingdom resist Coyote expansion with Dine in Season 1. I think that the Norish are made up of cultures and societies who have been, quote-unquote, absorbed into the Coyote Dominion as a larger whole. They have been subdued and they have been taken over militarily, but there are obviously dissenters and sections of that community, of all of those communities, that do not agree, and now they are a multinational, multicultural uprising known as the Norish. Ooh, one of the quest starters was even an enemy faction. We said the Norish is building a colossal machine of fantastic destructive potential. What if the machine isn't an actual clockwork, steampunk kind of machine, but instead is things like the Bloodsworn and what they can do to clockwork soldiers? If they can corrupt the actual clockwork soldiers that make up an enormous strength of the Coyote Navy, ooh, that is very good. Okay, I think that's what Lee Sterling sees. Is Lee Sterling sees the vow being sworn and everything else since being almost uncontrollably forced in a direction of lashing out at those who Marama feels need to be punished or put in their place. Mostly this has been subtly taking shots at the Dominion and at others, maybe enemies of the Church, because the Church has a way to sort of treat this affliction of this curse because of vows sworn on corrupt Sky Iron. Okay, Lee sees all of this and knows she will never stop chasing Cassidy. But is there a way to render the curse of this vow inert by cleansing these altars? I think that one of the costs for the weak hit on Clash was that we were harmed, so I think that Marama draws blood of Cassidy's, and she is almost ecstatic at the contact with it, the smell of it. She is desperate for it, and when she feels the cold touch of the spectral Lee Sterling, she recoils back, but that blood is too powerful. It's going to buy Cassidy a little bit of time to take decisive action, which we don't have to decide what that looks like right now. I'm just going to roll my 2 challenge dice against the 10 progress we've made. Let's see. Oh, that was so close. There is a 9 in there, but it's a 9 and a 5 for a strong hit on take decisive action. I think that where our side paused because of the threat to Asana, Damaris Iver's struggle against the other Bloodsworn, Quan, all this stuff, when the Bloodsworn look to Marama and see her frozen after Lee Sterling's spectral touch. When you take decisive action, if you are in a bad spot, count a strong hit without a match as a weak hit. So that is a weak hit You achieve your objective, but not without cost. We are going to either choose one from the table, or we are going to roll. I'm going to roll, but if I don't like the outcome, we can just choose one. Let's see. 46. Victory is short-lived. A new peril or foe appears. I'm actually going to do the one right below that, which says, you face collateral damage. Something is lost, damaged, or broken. And poor Quan, just the victim of all of these unfortunate events. I think that Quan is considered broken for the time being. And in this split second of cold gripping fear on Marama and Lee looking at Cassidy, he says, I can only buy you so much time. Run. And I think that Asana is free of this other Bloodsworn. She realized after Damaris Yver called out to her and got away, and this Bloodsworn has fallen. I think that with both of them, they managed to overcome the other, and the third one is standing on the rowboat with Quan as Marama is frozen in place. And I think that they're going to basically just run and hide for the time being, which is why Quan is lost/damaged to us for the moment. And Cassidy alone is going into this sea cave. So let's go ahead and do the whole sea cave thing, start to finish, rolling on the tables in the book. Here goes. We've got a sea cave. We're going to roll to see what its rank is. Oh, for once I actually rolled really low. It is only a 10, so it's troublesome. It's a minor cave system. The altar is somewhere in here. I actually appreciate that. We're going to roll for the threshold. Use all the tables. Here goes. Oh, my favorite when it comes to these oracles. I got a 95, which says roll on descriptor focus. Here goes. What do we got at the mouth of this sea cave? We know that there's a shipwreck tangle right outside it in the shallows, protecting this altar, presumably. We got a 34, which says ensnaring. 7, which says battleground. Well, I think that just described it. I think, yeah, we knew, but look at that. It's crazy that the dice also knoweth. All right, now when exploring a cave, we are likely to travel. This says in a sea cave, you're likely traveling by boat. I think that Cassidy is, once again, she's in the tangle of shipwrecks, and then there's probably some stony kind of path alongside the channel that goes in and out. Maybe the tide is a little down at the moment. She's able to go on foot through this sea cave. But it says here, time is your enemy in a cave. To emphasize the growing tension of underground expeditions, add a tension clock for your lurking threat. Let's roll that lurking threat. Oh, of course. Oh, it's actually not the highest one. I thought it was going to be the last result, but it is a 90, which says stalking predator. Sure. Actually, honestly, it's probably ghosts. We know this, right? This is what was at the other altar. These ones don't know Cassidy, don't know that she has sworn a bond to the Isle of Namira itself, the altars, the ghosts, all of these things. But lurking in these sea caves near this altar, probably some ghosts. We'll set this tension clock at, we'll say 4. That seems fair, because if it's troublesome, we're going to breeze through on progress, and the opportunity of filling out this tension clock could be interesting. And because it's only troublesome, we're going to roll twice on sea cave details and see if we get cursed results. Let's find out. Not cursed. 86 says tight squeeze through narrow tunnels, and also not cursed, 22 says jagged oyster beds. I like that. That's cool. So it's tight. You might get caught on some oysters, some clinging kind of mollusks all over this place. It is a very well hidden altar in these sea caves. So it's troublesome. We're going to go ahead and undertake an expedition as we are going through this sea cave at troublesome rank. I think that at the moment we are moving with speed because we know the danger outside. So we are rolling plus edge. That is a 4 plus 2 against a 9 and a 5 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. On a weak hit, we reach a waypoint, but the progress cost us. We need to make a suffer move, either one pretty good one or 2 small ones, or face a peril at the waypoint. I'm going to go ahead and do the less interesting one, but I just want to move it forward. We are going to mark 3 boxes of progress because we succeeded. We are going to go down to 1 health as the injury and just squeezing through these tunnels, maybe cutting ourselves on these oyster beds and things like that. And we're going to lose a supply, as I think that getting through here is probably not as easy as we'd hoped, and we might lose something in the shallows of the water here. So we're down to 2 supply, 3 spirit, oddly our highest, and 1 health. Cassidy is looking rough. And we are going to reach a waypoint, so we can either choose to explore this waypoint or just keep on moving forward. And sure, why not? Let's go ahead and envision this waypoint. We are going to roll on the Sea Cave opportunities, I think. I rolled a 100. Treasure? Medium repository? That's interesting. I've played 2 campaigns of Sundered Isles, and I don't know if I've ever rolled on these treasure oracles. Medium repository, here goes. Only, of course, a 9, so it is a trifle result. 1 precious item. Hey, that's pretty cool, though. I actually kind of like that better. We said these are tight, narrow kind of tunnels that lead towards this altar, the altar being the true prize, right? Like something is hidden here that is acting as a powerful beacon or kind of nexus, a point of this strange shape within which the domain of this curse that affects Sky Iron enters. It is the border of this, right? It is a corner of this cursed domain. So I like the idea of maybe just finding some treasure in here, being 1 relic, being maybe someone else who once sought this out or set it up or something. So let's see what this relic is. Oh, that's funny. 47 lustrous pearls. You said there was an oyster bed. Makes sense. Somebody collected pearls here at one point. Hey, sweet. That's good trade goods for us. Sorry for the detour, everybody. And we are going to explore this waypoint. That'll do it. We roll plus wits. That is a 4 plus 2 for a 6 versus a 5 and a 2 on the challenge dice. On a strong hit, we choose 1. We can either find an opportunity or we can gain progress. I think we're gaining progress. I think we're getting closer. And for the next leg of the journey, I think that we are probably staying vigilant because our injuries are catching up to us. These are tight corridors. The existence of this collection of pearls probably means that something is here. And now all of a sudden Cassidy's a little more worried that this isn't abandoned or seemingly maybe someone stashed something here or what have you. There might be someone. Just in case, staying vigilant, rolling plus wits. A 6 plus 2 for an 8 versus an 8 and a 5 on the challenge dice for another weak hit. We are going to mark progress, but it's going to cost us. And this time there will be a peril at the waypoint, which is going to be what? We can roll on the Sea Cave perils table. 30. Blocked or barricaded path. Interesting. We reach a dead end. Or is it? Is this physically blocked or is this blocked by ghosts? Ooh, I like that. That I think that we are... The temperature plummets and we are confronted by the spirits of this island. Lee Sterling is currently not with us. Cassidy has not felt his presence or heard him since he grabbed Marama in that clash. And I think that Cassidy alone is here. And on the Isle of Namira, she could see these spirits swirling all around her, where Senator Minos could not. Here, can she? I'm going to go ahead and say it's likely. 75 or less, Cassidy can see these ghosts, where others might feel like there's a barricade. Maybe Cassidy can see through this. Oh my goodness, an 82. Cassidy cannot. She feels them, but maybe without Lee, she can't see them? That could be interesting. Okay, I'm going to go a little off script here. We are undertaking an expedition, but I'm going to roll Compel. We're going to try and persuade these ghosts, and we are doing this by charming, pacifying, encouraging. We are rolling plus heart. Again, one of our worst stats, but this is something that we have sworn an oath on. We have promised to help these spirits. It is completely reasonable that they have no reason to believe us or trust us. I'm going to go ahead and use the haunted asset and say that I'm going to bring Lee into this. Cassidy is calling out saying, I am bound to one of you. Spirits, I feel your presence. I cannot see you. Trust me. Let me through. I am here. She pulls out the dagger and shows that it has been given this blessing by the Isle of Namira. She says, "I've cleansed that altar. Please let me through. I can free you. I can free you all." We're going to get +1 from the haunted path, and I'm going to give myself another +1 because of the dagger, because it kind of works with cutthroat. It says here, if you use a knife, not as a weapon to attack or threaten, but as a tool. So I think that actually works. It's not an example on the card, because who else has ever had an ghost enchanted cleansing dagger in this game? But I think it works. We're going to get +1 on this. So +2, here goes. That is a 3 + 3 against a 9 and a 10 on the challenge dice. On a miss, they refuse or make a demand that costs you greatly. Pay the price. 39. The environment or terrain introduces a new hazard. I actually kind of think this is the perfect time to roll on the next Sea Cave Oracle, which is the Sea Cave Heart. Let's see. 2. An elaborate trap or puzzle. When Cassidy pulls her dirk from its sheath and calls forth the ghostly emanation from it to explain that she can cleanse this altar, she can save all of these souls. She is here to fulfill a vow she made to another island where she did free these souls. She has a spirit bound to her in guilt. It glows before her, this invisible barricade of cold, ghostly spirits preventing her from making her way to the heart of this sea cave, to the altar that binds them all here. She finds that she can use her dagger to cut through this barricade, and she proceeds forward. But as she does so, it gets very, very dark. She fishes out of her pack, all soaking wet, torches, manages to get one alight, and walks in to this cold, damp sea cave. Looking around, she knows she's close. An elaborate trap or puzzle. Remember the writing that was present all over the Isle of Namira, why it was being studied by the Explorers Guild and Cynosha Society. Answers could have been present about it, about the ancient civilization that was there. In this intro, Cassidy's brother, explorer Drake McCabe, managed to, though unknown by him, decipher 2 of these words, which spelled mysterious vessel. I think that as Cassidy enters the heart of the sea cave where this altar should be, there's more of this writing everywhere. But I think that there's multiple altars, and she's going to need to cleanse the right one. I didn't really engage in the tension clock I set up for the lurking threat of this sea cave, but I think that we just filled it. And I'm going to start a new clock. This episode's going a little long already, but we're going to finish this with a scene challenge, and this scene challenge is going to be one of my easier ones. I think this is also going to be troublesome. We have a clear advantage in that we have the dagger, the knife, that can cleanse this altar. We have seen this writing before, though we couldn't decipher it. We've had a little bit of time with it since Senator Minos, Damara Sever, others have seen it and maybe made some progress on understanding it. We're going to start a 4-segment clock and another troublesome track and name it Cleanse the Right Altar. We're going to open by securing an advantage with expertise, focus, or observation, rolling plus wits. 3 + 2 for a 5 versus a 5 and a 7 on the challenge dice for a miss. You fail or your assumptions betray you. Fill a clock segment. Pay the price. Yikes. Strong start. Dice are betraying me. A 5 on Pay the Price says you encounter signs of a looming threat. Ooh, I love the idea of this being a trap and a puzzle. which of these, we'll say, roll a d6. Which of these 5 altars is the correct one? Maybe they represent the 5 altars that make up this whole domain, right? Like the 5 anchor points on this shape within which Sky Iron becomes corrupt. Oh, I love the idea of them being positioned over, and like when Cassidy looks at the floor of this sea cave, she realizes that all of the higher elevation places where these altars are on islands, and then there are sort of sinking depths that represent the ocean. Maybe it, floods when the tide comes in. Ooh, that's fun. All right, we filled one segment, and I think that she realizes that she cannot spend all this time here. I think that she knows that she's kind of on a timer. I think that maybe she starts to see ghosts swirling, waiting for her to slip up. All right, well, she tried to read something and see if she could make sense of any of this language, but that's not Cassidy's strength. So instead, she's going to face danger, and I think that she's going to do this. Ooh, I like this. We're going to roll with our best stat, finally. We're going to roll plus shadow, and I think that what she's doing is she does see a ghost. They're starting to swirl. They're starting to get a little more aggressive. They see her, and they know they're so close to being able to swarm her. This blasphemer, liar. They're already chained here against their will. Their souls cannot leave, and she comes in and mocks the place that holds them here. She's going to do this with deception by walking towards one of these altars and pretending to stab. And she's going to see if she can lure any of them out. She's going to think that if it's the right one, none of them are going to come. But if it's the wrong one, they're going to swarm like, haha, she failed, and now it's our time. Oh, so lucky. A 4 plus 3 for a 7 versus a 10 and a 6 on the challenge dice. That is a weak hit. On a weak hit, you are successful and mark progress, but also encounter a complication or setback. Fill a clock segment, so we are halfway there, and we have 3 boxes filled on this scene challenge. I think that Cassidy stops at the last second, but one of the ghosts cannot stop themselves and kind of passes through her. And I think that she's cold, and she drops the dagger to the ground, and all of a sudden, everyone's a little more on edge, and now Cassidy can see all these ghosts, and they're watching her, and she can't tell if they want her to succeed or they want to torture her. Something about this place is causing them to act aggressively. I mean, they did in the last one too, right? Why would they think any humans here to help them? They were probably sacrifices, right? These altars are traumatic places for them. So we're not going to mechanically reduce our health or spirit or anything like that. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and take a -1 to spirit. That seems reasonable. Down to 2 spirit. And I'm going to roll that 1 loss of spirit into a greater game of Cassidy mustering up the courage and walking to each of these, and she's just holding the dagger over each of them, basically playing a game of chicken with these souls, these spirits that are trapped here. And she's like, is this the one? You guys gonna come attack me on this one? And we are going to face danger. Why do I love rolling my worst stats? I should have made an incredibly tanky character with iron, because we are going to endure this aggression. Here goes. There we go, though. That is a 6 plus 1 for a 7 versus 2 6s on the challenge dice for a strong hit with a match. Mark progress twice, bringing us to 9 progress. At one point, Cassidy is holding it above this. I think the ghosts are now afraid to swarm her, but they kind of now see her willing to go through this pain to do this for them. When she reaches the right altar, they just hover there. And Cassidy feels like this is a sign. This is what it's supposed to be. This is the one. And she raises the dagger and plunges it down. We are rolling our 2 progress dice to finish the scene versus 9 progress. A 3 and a 6 on the challenge dice. Strong hit. You achieve your objective unconditionally. And that being a strong hit with a match on our worst stat, iron, I think means that Cassidy does not fall unconscious this time, but instead sees the unshackling and the freeing of these spirits. I think maybe they take the form of spectrally or magically, I guess, in this world, those Thanatoi, those spirit-delivering moths, just flutter all over this cave. Bright colors and fluttering of many, many, many insect wings just kind of going, and they go through walls of this sea cave, and they just go up into the darkness and light this dark sea cave, which Cassidy has now cleansed. This small outpost island in the periphery. We are down to 3 other islands. Now let's go ahead and roll these 2 challenge dice again against, we're going to give ourselves progress for that on the expedition to complete the sea cave against a 9. That is 2 8s. Whoa. To finish an expedition, does a match matter? It says here, on a strong hit, you reach your destination, complete your survey, mark a reward on your Discovery's legacy track. It'd be 1 tick for troublesome. I think for a weak hit, we can go ahead and mark 2 ticks on our Discovery's legacy track, which is going to bring us to half a new box. And for another strong hit with a match, I'm going to roll on the Story Clue Oracle, because I have a question. And that question is, if we have just removed another section of this ruinous domain for Sky Iron, if you think of what it looked like before, with 5 points creating this area, and we've removed 2 of them. Now this area is significantly diminished. Now is just a triangle. And presumably outside of this triangle is this shipwreck outside of this sea cave where those Bloodsworn were. First, let's roll 50-50. Are the Bloodsworn still there? 40 is yes, they are. Here we go. Story clue. How does this affect the Bloodsworn? We said the Revenant is reacting negatively to being outside of this ruinous domain because of the nature of its curse. Similarly, the nature of the curse of the Bloodsworn, sworn on this cursed Sky Iron within this domain, presumably is also going to be affected by no longer being within this domain. Let's roll story clue. 81. Oh. Wow. Did I just know? Leads to a notable or central place. We said the central island in the heart of the Dominion is the Razor Isle, a cursed civilization city on an island, a reminder of the horrors and tragedies of the Cataclysm, the Sundering itself. Something about that has to do with this curse. And that's where we end this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're enjoying what I'm doing here. If you are, go find me on the social medias. Email me at rainyplaysgamespod@gmail.com. If you want, you can leave a rating and review on your podcatcher of choice, which just goes a long way towards helping more people find me so we can talk more nerd stuff. If you want to talk nerd stuff and don't want to email me, join the DMs After Dark Discord. We're always hanging out there, having good chats. It's still nice and small, so it won't be overwhelming. If you want to be insanely generous, you can go to my Ko-fi page and leave me a one-time or recurring donation, which I promise just goes to covering the cost of podcast hosting and the video conferencing software and stuff like that. So really, no pressure, but I just appreciate you listening. And until next time, don't stop pushing forward to help people, even if the world is pushing back.